you and I and Sam and Hodgie spoke about a couple of dynamic midfield duos in the game under the age of 24. So some young ones.
Butters and Rosie.
They were the two that we mentioned, but also you mentioned the emerging Warner and Goulden.
Yep.
So I did ponder this and whether they were the best duo in the game, Rosie and Butters. But I thought I'd make it a little bit harder tonight. And then last night, the temper text machine it caught fire. Other nominees flooded through. Gerard mentioned Warner and the left-footed superstar Errol Goulden, All-Australian fancy Noah Anderson, and the number one pick, Matty Rao from 2018. Rightly got some love. Brayshaw and Sarong are pretty impressive out in the West too. The challenge is harder tonight. Who are the best? Who is the best young midfielder in the game under the age of 24? Here's the top 10. Before the top 10, some special mentions because it is frightening how hard this was to do. I thought I was on my run this morning. I was like, what am I going to talk about tonight? I was like, okay, we'll do the best midfielders under the age of 24. That'd be pretty easy. It's not easy because these are the players that miss out. Brayshaw misses out.
Yep.
Rao misses out. Horn Francis and Will Ashcroft are coming with a bullet, as is Josh Rochelle, but they miss out. But if we do this in 12 months' time, depending on how many midfield minutes Josh Rochelle gets, I think he could be in the conversation. And Dacos doesn't qualify because he doesn't yet play enough in the midfield. Number 10 is Caleb Sarong, having a ginormous year.
You've got him 10.
Got him 10. I got him 10.
Sheesh.
He's upset already. That's not a good start. At 9 is Bailey Smith from the Western Bulldogs.
Yep.
Building nicely into this season. Number 8 is your man Tom Green, but coming with an absolute Elon Musk rocket is Tom Green. I mean, if we do this in 10 games time, let alone 12 months time, he could be number 1. That's how good he's going. Zach Butters is 7, and it's a good 7. It's a really good 7.
Jeez.
I've got Warner just in front of Butters at 6.
You got Warner in.
Warner's in, yeah.
Okay.
What he did last year was extraordinary.
Yeah.
We had a big
what about
final
this year?
series. They're not as good this year, but...
Is it based on this year's form?
It's just based on how good a footballer they are.
Okay.
So he's number 6. Errol Goulden is just building. You
got Goulden in front of Warner.
Yeah, got Goulden in front of Warner. I think it's hard to split them. I've got, and this will be controversial because he could be number 1, this guy, the best midfielder under the age of 24. I've got Luke Davies-Uniacke at 4.
Yep.
Had an enormous season. Of course, he's out with 4 weeks with a hammy. Isn't ideal, and he's playing in a poor side. So that probably hurts him. He could be even better, but a lot of time for him, clearly. This guy could have been 1 as well. I've got Anderson at 3, Noah Anderson. I've got my man Connor Rosie at 2.
Yep. Be not much argument there.
I've got Sam Walsh still at 1. But it wasn't a convincing one. But let's talk about Sam Walsh for a second.
Well, it's hard to talk about Sam Walsh on this year because he's played limited footy.
But I want to talk about him on this year because the guy's got it. What's he got? A rod in his back, or he's got the significance of the surgery that he had.
Yep.
To have no preseason, to see him jog slow laps right up until probably February from memory in Carlton. So he's had no preparation, and he lit the fuse for them in the second half on Saturday night.
Extraordinary. He's battling against the odds.
He's an absolute, and I know I was never a detractor of Sam Walsh.
No.
I think people get confused about what the argument was. My argument was that
Rosie versus
selected the wrong player. All along I said Walsh is going to be 250 game and multiple All-Australian, multiple best and fairest. But he's better than I thought he was going to be, and I love his attitude, and I just love the toughness of the guy. So I've got him at 1. If you agree or disagree, I'd love your thoughts because it is a strong list of absolute young midfield guns.
I'm a huge fan of Warner.
Yes,
I reckon 2 years before he started to fire, you could really see his first year. You could just see he had something special. But I'll be interested to hear what Hoyney's got to say about his year this year because I just don't think he's done the damage. He's certainly getting possessions, but a couple of games he's been well held. But ball in hand, I reckon he would be marked down savagely because of not hitting targets. But you've named some rippers. Green's a ripper. Shai Bolton, he is just he's back to his best. I mean, he's had a poor year, but on the weekend he was just sensational again.
Good text coming through already. Max Holmes was an oversight from me, but hasn't had the body of work in the midfield that some of these other guys. He's probably played a handful of games inside. We came off the wing, but I do like the fact that he's getting some recognition. Cornes, you've lost it. Sarong ahead of Brayshaw. I'm comfortable with Sarong ahead of Brayshaw, but I'm not comfortable that I left Will Day out. I don't think he would have made my 10, Will Day, but he definitely should have got a special mention. So thanks to Joe for pointing out my oversight. And Rosie and Butters will never, ever repeat or match what Oliver and Petrarca have already done. And I don't disagree with that.
Well, we're going to find out how your list stacks up with the numbers man. And Hoyney joins us after this.
Now on Sportsday, full-on footy analysis with Daniel Hoyne. Thanks to Champion Data, the story behind the game.
Kane, he's got that big now. I believe he's got his own manager. That's how big he is. Welcome to you, Hoyney.
Is that true?
Geez, it's great to be here on a Tuesday night when I'm the one that's actually not producing a top 10 list or something like that. It's absolutely magnificent.
What was the feedback like, Hoyney, last week? Firstly, before you answer, I think people got confused about the criteria a little bit, which can happen from time to time. So the 10 that you mentioned was on expected score. For example, a ruckman is going to be able to score higher in the ratings because they're around the footy and there's hit-outs and there's a lot of contested stuff. So you rated them on their expected score and their work above the average of the expected score. Am I right?
Absolutely spot on, Kane. Couldn't have absolutely summarised that better myself. So, no, it was... no, I think actually the feedback was actually quite well received. It was actually a lot better than I thought. I was really tempted not to open up Twitter when I got home, and I thought, I better do this. And but as we said, and this is what we do, is sort of come at it, from a different lens and sort of provide a bit of a different perspective on it. But I thought your list overall, Kane, was quite good.
Walsh doesn't rate as highly this year. I mean, from my observations of the ratings, is that correct? But I'm still happy with him being the best of the lot. But in terms of your ratings, what is hurting him?
Yeah, so ball use is hurting him. So he's a bottom. What is he? I think about 340th player in the competition for impact with ball in hand this year. So there's no issue in what he's doing from a ball winning perspective, but it's just a ball use perspective at the moment. What
about Warner and his ball use this year? Where have you got him rated?
So he's just inconsistent in terms of what he's done this year. He's had some absolute blinders this year, Warner, but then he's had some real quiet ones as well. So I think he goes hand in hand with what a lot of that Sydney midfield group has actually done this year.
Would you have him rated in your top 10? 24 and under?
Well, it depends on what you're actually rating it. If you're rating it on just purely 2023 performance, probably not. But if you're rating it
that's what I'm rating it on
the last, probably not on 2023 performance, but moving forward and what he's done over probably the last 12, 18 months, I absolutely would.
Okay, well, let's whip through your top 10 for 2023 alone.
So this is just purely off the ratings. This is not against expectation. This is just purely looking at AFL player rating points for the 24-year-olds that Kane's gone through. So Noah Anderson comes out number 1 with that. Caleb Sarong 2, Connor Rosie 3, Jai Newcomb 4, Zach Butters 5, Goulden 6, Tom Green 7, Adam Chera 8, Shai Bolton 9, and LDU comes in at 10.
Yeah,
Interesting.
But I probably observed Bolton more of a high half forward more so than a mid. So that's probably why I didn't mention him. Chera, wouldn't have made my 10, but should have got a special mention for his form this year. But not too dissimilar, are we?
No, absolutely. And I tip my hat to you, Kane. Anytime anyone does a list, I have full credit for anyone that does a list because it gets extreme feedback.
Well, they're coming thick and fast on the temper text. But why don't we kick off with your overall observations for the round?
Yeah, so the overall observation from the round is I'm finding it really challenging at the moment trying to assess and sort of work out where a lot of teams sit in the greater, sort of big picture analysis, if you like, for 2023, and I'm wondering, how much of it is to do with talent, how much of it is it to do with system, and how much is it to do with injury, if you like. So the three teams that I want to look at from a defensive perspective is Essendon to start with. So we've put it on watch on this show all year that their defensive profile, whilst they defend their defensive 50 as good as anyone else in the competition, how easy they are to actually move the ball against is still the number one concern. But they were holding up okay, so you had to take a little bit of notice of it. And then Jaden Laverty goes down in the last quarter against Collingwood.
Yep.
And literally from that moment on, they have been absolutely opened up like a sieve. He hasn't played since. So how much of it is system issue for Essendon? How much is it talent issue with losing your number one key defender? I'm not so sure. You look at Geelong, and the number one issue for me at the moment with Geelong is what they're doing defensively. It's been very un-Geelong-like for the whole year, pretty much the whole year.
In what way?
In terms of how they've been able to stop the opposition moving the ball from one end of the ground to the other, and how they've been able to defend turnover. Under Chris Scott's reign, they have been top three in that area of the game for best part of his whole coaching tenure. But how much of it is it to do with talent? So their back third of the ground has been rocked for the whole year. So Koladashny misses the first 3 weeks of the year. Jack Henry hasn't played a game yet. Sam DeConning's now been out for the next 3 weeks. Jeb Buse has missed a couple of weeks here and there. Mitch Duncan missed the first 3 weeks of the year. So that back third has been rocked for the whole year. They're far from settled, haven't been settled all year. So is it a system issue for Geelong this year, or is it a talent issue? I'm not so sure yet.
Well, there's two issues, though. I mean, when we talk defence, and you've just, I guess, encouraged this perspective, you start thinking about defenders. But when you're talking about defending transition from D50 or F50 of the opposition, or your forward 50 to your back 50, you're talking about your midfield. You're talking about your high half forwards. You're talking about your Jeremy Cameron. So you can be exposed in defence, in the defensive area, if your defensive game in your front half and your middle third is poor.
But you've also got those elite defenders that know how to cut off angles, how to actually stop the opposition, sort of going one end of the ground to the other, because you're able to, intercept mark and cut off opposition, attacking chains in that midfield zone as well. So that's where I get confused with them. And then Sydney, there's no Rampy, there's no McCartan, So,
but their midfield is getting slaughtered.
Correct. So would their defensive issues still be there anyway if those three were there, because of what the midfield group is actually doing at the moment? I'm not so sure. You go to the offensive side of things, and I raised on this show a couple of weeks ago about Collingwood, just putting it on the agenda that Collingwood's inability to score for a 4 or 5 week period had been poor. They've been the worst team in the competition at scoring from intercept. How much of that is to do with McStay going out of the team, Mason Cox going out of the team, the forward half of the ground looking totally different? I'm not so sure. Mason Cox comes back into the team on the weekend. They're able to score 60 points from intercept. They haven't done that for 5 or 6 weeks. St Kilda. I've got St Kilda on watch, and we're talking about them a little bit later on in terms of what they've been able to do offensively, not what they're doing defensively. How much is that going to change when Max King comes back into the team this week? Is that all of a sudden going to change their offensive profile with one addition? I'm not so sure. Things will actually work out. So that's why I'm just finding it quite challenging at the moment. There's one team that I'll get to later on in the observations that I'm not finding it a challenge at the moment, in terms of just trying to assess where they actually sit big picture-wise.
All right, Hoyney's here, official AFL data partner for over 20 years, is Champion Data, the story behind the game. Let's get into your main talking points from round 9. We'll start with Richmond.
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk at the moment about Richmond, and are they back, and should we be feared and scared about what they're actually doing and what have you. I was massive on Richmond heading into this year, so I'm just going to put that out there. I was huge on them. I thought they had every chance to finish top 4 on the back of what they did last year, and really probably should have finished a lot higher on the ladder than what they did. And I've been holding, but after that Gold Coast performance a couple of weeks ago, I had to concede.
You folded your cards,
and I'm not jumping back on the back of what they did against Geelong on the weekend. I thought heading into that Geelong game, I thought they actually did what they should have done against Geelong on Friday night.
Given Geelong's inexperience,
given Geelong's outs, the key outs, and 5 in a row. It's hard in this comp to win 6 in a row. We know that. So I thought they did what they actually should have done. But based on accuracy, if Geelong actually had taken their chances in the first half in particular, Geelong probably should have been in front by 2-3 goals at half time, and who knows what actually happens in the second half. So you just have a look at their profile in terms of the last 4 weeks compared to the last 5 weeks. In terms of a scoreboard perspective, both in the turnover game and the clearance game, the rankings haven't changed. They've slightly gone from 10th in the turnover game to 9th, so give or take, who really cares? And then in the clearance game, they've gone from 12th to 9th. So a slight increase, but we're not jumping up and down going, this is a profile that's jumping off the page at the moment. Get scared about what they're actually doing. Where I do want to give them a little bit of credit is this in two phases. One, from a team perspective, so that they have improved over the last month in terms of what they've done defensively, in terms of being able to hold up in their D50. That was a huge concern last year, and that was the reason why they got knocked out first week of finals. When you play ping-pong footy, high-scoring matches, and you can't hold up in your D50, that's not going to get you through a whole season. So a huge tick there. The other tick for me is an individual, and it's Dusty. So, yes, people are talking about his performance against Geelong on the weekend, but I want to go a bit deeper than that.
You've been on his on his team since round one.
Yeah, so I have. Yeah, so based on the expectation that you alluded to at the start, Kane, in terms of the player rating points, and if you're performing above expectation or below expectation based off of the position that you're playing, if we look at the players that have played at least 500 minutes this year, we're inducting Dusty into a top 10 player in the competition this year. He comes in number 8th in the competition of any player that's played 500 minutes this year. So he's meant to be averaging around about 8.5 AFL player rating points. He's averaging close to 13.5.
Sheesh.
So that wasn't just yes, he got the scoreboard return on Friday night against Geelong by the 4 goals, but he's also been able to impact matches a little bit more than probably what a few people would have thought.
So he would be in your Champion Data All-Australian team at this point?
At this point, he would be, yep. In the role that he's playing, yep.
Yeah, he's already got 4 All-Australians, Gerard, so continuing
line
on.
up.
Who would have thought? You've got a couple of Sydney guns who are underperforming on your radar as well.
Yeah, I just want to have a little bit of a discussion with the two of you. So, myself and you, Gerard, we talked about this later on last week. When looking at connection inside 50, how much is it on the kicker going in, and how much of it is on the target going in? And you can make of it what you will. You might have one answer, Kane. You might have another answer, Gerard. I might have another answer as well. We don't really know what the actual right sort of weight.
And just another factor is how quickly have you moved the ball to get it inside 50, and how many numbers have you not allowed to get back? Because if you're kicking into an open forward line, your kick's going to look a lot better. Cripps isn't a great kick inside 50, but fast play late in that game against the Western Bulldogs on Saturday night, he's able to hit a target because it was fast play, open numbers. So that's the other factor you've got to weigh up as well. That's hard to judge.
No, absolutely spot on. And the reason why I want to have that conversation is around Isaac Heaney. So there's a lot of talking now about Heaney and the output that he's having. So this year, when Sydney have gone to him, they've gone to him 31 times inside 50. They've only scored 7 times when they've gone to Heaney. So he's now, for this year, he's now the second worst target inside 50 of any player in the competition. And the reason why that's so staggering is because for the previous 5 years, there was no more effective target inside 50 than what Isaac Heaney was. Sydney was scoring 1 in every 2 times.
Yep.
They were going to Heaney. So, again, I get back to, and I keep watching Sydney, and you keep looking at it, you go, how much is this Heaney, or how much of this is the Sydney midfield's inability to be able to connect and actually give him a chance to actually turn those targets into a score?
How's his one-on-one numbers? Because he last year made half chances, full chances.
So that's where you can't sort of blame the kicker, because the one-on-one, he's giving you a 50-50 chance to win it. So last year, I think he won about 45% of his one-on-ones, which was the second best one-on-one player in the competition last year. This year, he's been involved in 19. He's won 3 one-on-one contests for the year. That's the second worst one-on-one player in the competition this year. So 2 phases of his game in the front half of the ground have completely fallen away in that area. The second player I just want to mention, and this is a different conversation, is the magnet of Tom Papley. So the back end of last year, when Sydney got on that run of winning 9 games in a row before grand final day, he attended 1 in every 3 centre bounces that Sydney were in. And yes, the return wasn't absolutely through the roof in terms of what he was able to do in the centre bounce, but the ability to be able to get him involved around the ground and lose his opponent and actually become one of the more dangerous small forwards in the competition was significant. The first 5 rounds of this year, when Sydney are going okay, 3-2, he's attending 1 in every 4 centre bounces. So a little bit off, but not too far off. Since then, he's attending 1 in every 10 centre bounces now over the last 4 weeks. Why? I don't know what. I don't know why. So as a result, his output over the last 4 weeks, so this is since that Richmond game,
Yep.
has really, significantly dropped away. And I just wonder, why that magnet has been moved out of the centre bounce as much as what it has over the last month.
So they've normally got Rowbottom, Parker,
Goulden.
Goulden and Warner. So
Yep.
Goulden's gone in and essentially Papley's gone out.
Yeah. And as you said before, Kane, Goulden's flying at the moment. But Goulden was going well as a winger as well. So and all we're talking about here with Papley is getting him involved in a couple more centre bounces. We're not talking about taking 70, 80 minutes of midfield time off Errol Goulden. It's just getting him into that centre bounce, injecting him, and then going forward.
What have you seen with Port Adelaide, Hoyney, as we move on?
So it's a really interesting game ahead on Friday night, I think, clearly against Melbourne. Probably the game of the round. I haven't really seen the fixture too far beyond Friday night, so it might not be. But anyway, but we'll go with that. But
It's up there. It's second versus fourth, so it's a pretty good bet.
I'll go with that statement then. but yeah, so clearly, so they've got their brand back in terms of when you watch a Port Adelaide game, you're able to identify who they are, and if they're not playing this way, you're thinking that they're in trouble. So they're a territory team. They want to get the ball forward, happy to lock it in, through either winning the ball back off the opposition or actually forcing a stoppage, however they want to do it. They're the number one timing forward half team in the competition, and as a result, no one scores more off forward half change, whether that be forward half intercept or forward half clearance, than what Port Adelaide do. But where the interesting conversation's going to be on Friday night against Melbourne. So Melbourne are going to get their chance going back the other way, and while Port Adelaide have been able to hold up quite well in their defensive 50 for the majority of the season, one area where they're actually extremely vulnerable is when they actually do get isolated one-on-one.
Right.
So when they're able to protect each other and zone off and help their mates out and what have you, they are extremely hard to actually score against. But if you can actually isolate them one-on-one, there's no worse team in the competition at defending one-on-one contests than what Port Adelaide are. And you look at their two key defenders, Alia this year. So he's been involved in 27 one-on-ones. He's lost 11 of those, so a 41% loss rate. That's the third worst in the competition of any player this year. And then Trent McKenzie been involved in 18, lost 7, which is a 39% loss rate. That's the fifth worst of the competition. So how much can Max Gawn, in particular, really challenge this area of the game Friday night? For me, is going to be a fascinating battle.
It's a huge watch, and I reckon if you plugged in Jonas's numbers into that as well as their third key defender, his one-on-one numbers wouldn't be great either. But they're fighting above their weight division.
They are, and they knew that. That's why they went for Radaglia.
Yeah. Daniel Hoyne is here working through his 7 main talking points from round 9, and all it says on my screen, Hoyney, is guess who ?
Yeah, and I wanted to play a bit of Guess Who with you, gents.
The game
this
we got
afternoon.
for us.
I always loved this game, Guess Who. I used to beat my sister a lot in this game as a kid, so we'll play it again tonight. But last 5 weeks of the competition, these are our highest rated players in the competition. Bont comes out number 1, no surprise. Christian Petracca, number 2. Toby Green, 3. Zach Butters is flying at number 4. Tom Liberatore at 5. I'll give you 1,000 guesses to tell me who comes in at number 6 in the competition over the last 5 weeks.
I'll go Will.
Is it Cottrell?
No, it's not.
Will Ashcroft.
Oh, come on. Will Ashcroft? No. I'll give you one more guess and then I'll give you the answer. No,
it's too obvious.
No, too obvious that one. Number 6 is Jai Newcomb. So I wanted to just dive into why Jai Newcomb has come in at number 6, and probably to me the aspect of his game that's actually really surprising, and I've taken note of it over the last couple of months, is what he's doing with ball in hand. So he's more of a handballer than he is a kicker. But when he kicks it with such penetration, and they're low and they're hard and they're actually quite effective. So in this period, from a midfielder's perspective, from a ball use, Petracca's 1, DeGoey's 2, Adam Cherra's 3, and Jai Newcomb comes in at number 4 in terms of what he's doing with ball in hand. So
I can see a headline.
So
guess who?
Huge. So I'm all over with you, Kane, about with Will Day. I think he's an absolute. I think he's going to be an absolute star. But so is this guy as well, and he's so young still as well. So just a bit of credit to a team that's probably not going to have too many more positives, if you like, for the rest of the season.
We should do that game every week, I reckon. I don't mind that. The Blues have been the big talking point probably for the last fortnight, to be fair. Hoyney, and you've been sort of sceptical on them even when they started the season reasonably strongly from a win-loss point of view. What are you noticing?
Yeah, so just having a look at the last 6 weeks and their performance and what their profile actually looks like. And so, yeah, there might sound like that there's a lot of doom and gloom for Carlton supporters at the moment, but there is a foundation of your game to actually build upon with what you're doing at the moment. So over that 6-week period, you've got your contest and your clearance game back to start with. So you're the second best contested possession team in the competition for a 6-week period, and now you're the third highest scoring team from clearance over the last 6-week period. So there's still a lot of talk that Carlton have lost their clearance game, That's park that in the bin. Park that in the bin. They're actually going okay now, and that's how they got back into that game.
Yes.
Against the Dogs on the weekend.
And that's without Cripps having a big influence.
Yeah, correct. And then people will talk a lot about, from a ball movement perspective, they've got no ball movement game, they can't do this, they can't do that. Well, over this 6-week period, they are the second best team in the competition at going from one end of the ground to the other. So that aspect of the game is actually going okay. The issue for me that's actually dropped away, which was their strength in the back end of last year and their strength at the start of this year, is their ability to be able to hold up in their defensive 50. So in this 6-week period, they're the fourth easiest team to score against when the ball goes inside 50. And you think back to that first half on Saturday night against the Dogs, they dominated territory for the majority of that half. But so often when the Dogs got a chance to go in, they would convert that opportunity into a score. And I'm putting it on a few of their individuals, down back. So in this 6-week period, Jacob Wiedering is their leading intercept marker, but he's only taken 13 intercept marks per game. So to put that into context, Charlie Ballard's taken 31, Asava Radagalier 22, Nick Haynes has taken 26.
You said per game. What?
No, sorry, 13 intercept marks in total in a 6-week period. So Ballard 31. Jack Payne 26, Asava Radagalier 22, and Nick Haynes 22. So they're miles off the best.
Yep.
Lewis Young. We gave Lewis Young a fair bit of credit on this show at the start of this year.
We did.
He's really dropped off over the last 5 or 6 weeks. Only 10 intercept marks in 6 games. And then Mitch McGovern. That's the role for Mitch McGovern in this team. He's played 5 games in this period for 9 intercept marks. So I'm going to the other end of the ground and actually having a look at these guys, and in terms of can they get their intercepting back to become that defensive, rock, if you like they were in the back end of last year and the start of this year, to be able to compensate what they're doing at contest, what they're doing at clearance, and what they're doing from a ball movement perspective. So there are a few teams at the moment that have multiple issues right across the ground. At least Carlton have a foundation to be able to build upon for Sunday against Collingwood.
So ultimately, intercepts come off the back of a pressure kick through the middle more often than not.
Yep.
So is the pressure through the middle not where it's at? Are they pressing up too high and having too much grass between each?
No, the pressure's okay.
Yep.
The pressure's okay. And their ability to defend ball movement, I think, is about 7th or 8th in the competition. So it's far from horrendous. It's just when it actually goes in, these guys they don't even look like being real threats to the opposition that we see a lot of the best teams in the competition have. So it's just an interesting watch.
Is West Coast situation as hopeless as what it seems?
It is. It's hard. I'm going to try do my best here to actually just give West Coast supporters something.
Give us something.
But his name's Jinby, isn't it?
And I'll get to him later on. But just the 2 things for West Coast. So from the team element, just want to give Adam Simpson a little bit of credit here in terms of that. He has tried to shift and change the way in terms of West Coast and in terms of how they're actually playing. So they're the 5th highest pressure team in the competition this year. So they're having a crack with it. Their pressure numbers and their tackle numbers against Gold Coast were some of the best that we've seen from West Coast over a 4 or 5 year period. They just simply aren't good enough. They haven't got the list. And this is where I get sort of come back to it a little bit, is that where did everyone have West Coast at the start of the year? I certainly didn't have them anywhere near finishing top 8.
Yep.
And then they've been absolutely hammered from an injury perspective there. So that's not a good combination. So they are trying to change the way that they do pressure. Their ground ball numbers in general play are the best that we've seen West Coast rank for best part of 7 or 8 years. So they are starting to embrace a bit more of a high pressure, a chaotic, a ground ball sort of game that we just haven't associated West Coast with for the last 4 or 5 years. They just simply, as I said, they simply haven't got the personnel either on the park and probably overall from a list perspective, even when the personnel is actually there. And then just the player element that I just want to recognise is Tim Kelly as well.
Yep.
So I think Tim Kelly's probably come under a bit of criticism over the last couple of years, and probably fair enough as well. But over the last 6 weeks, he's now a top 25 player in the competition in that period of time. And it's what he's actually doing from a ball winning perspective, not the outside ball use perspective that we saw him at Geelong. That's really significant. So only Bont has had greater impact on the competition from a ball-winning perspective than Tim Kelly has over a 6-week period. In fact, his ball use in that period is 343rd in the competition. So it's the contest, the clearance element of his game, which he should be able to walk off and actually think that he's trying to actually perform to a high level, which he probably hasn't done for the last couple of years.
And we'll wrap it up with the Lions.
Yeah, so as I said at the start with the overall observations, I'm finding it quite challenging with a few teams at the moment.
Yep.
If there is, and we talked about this last week, that you don't want to be perfect at the moment. If there's one team that has just about the perfect profile at the moment, take out the round 1 game, it is Brisbane.
Well, that's a big step forward for Brisbane because you haven't rated their defence for a long time.
No, I've been critical of them, and that's been the area of concern that I wanted to watch this year.
Jack Payne has been a big solution.
It's been a huge selection, but just in really simple terms here, the number one measure that I look for to see if your game's in good nick, both offensively and defensively, how often can you turn possession into a score, and how often do you restrict the opposition doing the same thing?
Yep.
So in this period, Brisbane are second for turning their possession into a score, and then number one, no team is harder to score against when winning possession against than Brisbane. So second and first. To put that into context, we've only twice seen a team rank 1-on-1
Geelong
in both
last
areas.
year.
Geelong last year, and they won a flag by 81 points. And Geelong in 2007, and they won a flag by 119 points. They're the only 2 times we've seen a team rank 1-on-1, and Brisbane are very, very, very close in that area.
Brisbane, the real deal, according to Hoyney, and it's pretty hard to argue with that. Top 2 a must, though, I would think. They need to finish the home and away
Huge result.
season in the top 2, and that's going to be tough to do with the way that Collingwood and Melbourne and some others are going. Right, Hoyney, who did the coaches miss?
So we go back to Friday night, and I was I was fascinated by this guy. So Noah Bolter's performance on Friday night, I thought was exceptional.
Yep.
We had him as the second highest rated player on the ground Friday night, but he didn't get a vote from the coaches. I thought Hawkins looked like he was going to kick 7 or 8 or 9 to start that game.
Did.
But he's going to be able to fight back, have 6 intercept marks, 11 intercept possessions. But it was a typical Noah Bolter game. We mentioned him on this show a couple of weeks ago. I love watching him because his one-on-one battles are fascinating. He was involved in 9 against Hawkins. He won 3. He lost 3, and there were 3 that were neutralised. That's Noah Bolter and his season in a nutshell right there. He'll go for it. He'll back himself to win it, and if he doesn't, he'll probably lose it going there. But his game on the weekend was exceptional, and he's been a key reason as to why Richmond's defensive profile in their D50s turned around a little bit.
They gave all the votes to Nathan Broad. He got the 8.
Yeah. He was pretty good too. Which unheralded Port Adelaide midfielder did they miss?
I love watching this bloke play, and this is going to sound probably a little bit silly, but William Drew for me. So he was our 5th highest rated player on the ground on the weekend, didn't get a vote from the coaches, and I could probably understand why he didn't get a vote when he only had 17 disposals, 11 contested possessions. He did kick a goal. But his impact, and this has probably now been for a 24-month period now, where he's so clean in the contest that you can miss a lot of what he actually does. So he's one to watch moving forward for Port Adelaide, and it'll be interesting to see the role that he actually gets on Friday night against Melbourne.
I love him, absolutely love him. And speaking of Brisbane, they missed a number 1 draft pick.
Yeah, so Cam Rayner, I thought Cam Rayner was, if not the reason, one of the main reasons why Brisbane actually won the game against Essendon. And his second half was spectacular. So across the whole game, only Joe Danaher rated higher on the ground by our rating system, but he didn't get a vote, Cam Rayner. But his second half, 11 disposals, 9 contested possessions. Only Lachie Neale had more, but importantly, 7 scores that he was involved in. And this actually surprised me as well. He was the number 1 pressure player on the ground in that second half as well. So, we talked, and you've talked a lot about this and his role behind the ball. We won't see him play behind the ball again. He's actually turned his year around.
He's a ripper.
Yep.
As is Darcy Fogarty.
Yeah, so I just wanted to use the Fogarty example as to why our rating system value accuracy and ball use so highly. So he was the third highest rated player on the ground, Fogarty, from only 8 disposals. He didn't get a vote from the coaches, which is not surprising. But just that's how our rating system works. So he kicks 2 goals, 2 challenging goals from pretty challenging spots on the ground, which is going to rate you really highly. 100% kicking efficiency as well. So when he actually did get it, despite it only being 8 disposals, it turns into high impact, which is what the ratings actually value quite significantly.
Hoyney, each week we do Hoyney's gem and Hoyney's horror. We'll start with your gem this week.
Yeah, so the gem is just looking at Ruben Gimby actually. So his ability to be able to lay the tackles that he does is up there with the best debutants that we've actually seen. So I think he laid 16 tackles on the weekend.
Yep.
And what he's been able to lay across the course of the season hasn't been done by a player in his first year on Champion Data records. So going a little bit with that West Coast theme, just to give him a little bit of love in terms of what he's been able to do.
What about your horror?
Yeah, so the horror is looking at the actual gap between the worst teams in the competition and the rest. So the gap between the third worst team from a percentage perspective to the fourth worst team in the competition from a percentage perspective is the fourth worst that we've ever seen across the entire competition after round 9. So I think West Coast, North Melbourne are on about 63, 64%, and then GWS are on 85%. So we haven't seen a gap that big at round 9 that often across the competition.
And it's a massive issue for the AFL. Hey, just in, Mitch Cleary on Channel 7 is reporting, well, he's not reporting much other than that the start time of this year's grand final will be announced tomorrow, Gerard. So there's no breaking news there from Mitch other than
it
will be announced tomorrow. What's your tip?
The tip and the absolute shortest price certainty of all time, it will be as per the last 30-odd years. And I'm happy to take all bets on anything else.
I'm not going to bet. You've got good line of sight on things such as this. So
there was
a day grand final. Lock it in.
I cannot believe the outgoing CEO is going to waste any political capital going the other way. He'd be booed. He'd be booed in his last.
Booed out of the game. Hoyney, a lot of questions and texts coming through. Let's whip through a couple of those before you leave us tonight. Can we ask Hoyney to provide a statistical position on the Carlton and Collingwood game? Are Carlton outperforming Collingwood in any areas of the game that may create an upset on Sunday?
Yeah, so getting back to what we just said with Carlton, their ability to be able to win contests is up there with the best teams in the competition. And if you are to beat Collingwood, you have to win the contest. If you don't win contest against Collingwood, they'll outnumber you. Their ball movement will absolutely overwhelm you. Carlton's strength is in and around a contest at the moment, so that is their chance.
All right. Josh asks, Hoyney, love your work. What's the difference between a score assist and a score involvement?
Good question.
Good question, Josh. So a score assist is the last player in the chain to be able to dish it off to the eventual scorer. So that's through a handball to the scorer or to a kick to the scorer or to a knock on to the scorer. A score involvement is just getting involved in the chain at any stage that leads to a score.
So if you miss a kick from 5 metres out, that 99% of the population are going to kick, you get taxed heavily on the ratings. Does the guy with the last possession who gives it to that, does he get taxed just as badly?
He does not get any impact. Okay. It's not his fault.
So if you're going to stuff it up,
not his fault.
Okay.
Alan is a dog supporter, Hoyney. Do you have a stat on groups of goals conceded when the Dogs lose momentum? They struggle to turn the tide. My concern for 2023, says they are one of the worst in the comp. Conceding clumps of goals.
Yeah, so I'll have a bit of a deeper dive into that for you during the week. I've just got the Dogs a little bit on watch at the moment. I'm not convinced with exactly what they're doing. No, not
right.
and
why not?
What's your concerns?
I think their defensive profile at the moment is a little bit misleading. I think they're giving up too many entries. They're too easy to actually move the ball against. It's not too dissimilar to what Essendon's defensive profile was at about round 6 or 7, and now it eventually gets exposed. Fascinating to see how Adelaide actually exposed that on the weekend.
That's going to be a great game at the Rat.
Yeah, fascinating. Yep.
And just on the Crows, question for Hoyney, what do you see as the key hallmarks of the Crows games? How do they compare with other contenders, and is it sustainable? Ask Dan.
Yeah, so the number one sort of phase of the game is the turnover game. If you're implementing the turnover game, your game is sustainable. Adelaide's turnover game and work in general play outside of contest is up there with the best in the competition. That is why you can get excited with what Adelaide are doing. It is a sustainable brand of footy that they're actually playing at the moment.
Just a question on Adelaide. Is there a role for Matt Crouch at any other club?
I would be looking at it. Yeah, no, I'd be looking at it. If you're a team that is in desperate need of an inside stoppage, feed the ball out component, if that's missing, I think I'd be looking at I'll be looking at Matt Crouch's magnet.
Tom Mitchell type, and what Collingwood have done for his game. And so we've got the Western Bulldogs on the watch list. There's a couple of Carlton defenders on the watch list. I want to put, and this is Sam as well off the text, James Sicily on the watch list and his performance this year. Is there any red flags that you noticed? Because he rated really highly last year.
Yeah, so he's rating nowhere near as highly as what he was last year. So his ability to be able to intercept and more so intercept mark isn't at the levels as it was last year. Which it's an interesting watch in terms of what he's been able to actually put together so far this year.
All right, Hoyney,
well done,
we love
Hoyney.
your work. We will see you next week. Appreciate all your work and the time you put into this.
No, enjoy the week.
Got an
Daniel
upset
Hoyne
for us?
there.
Upset. I'll go Adelaide. I don't know if Adelaide's an upset or not, but Adelaide beat the Dogs.
Yeah, I reckon that would be an upset. There's a few upset contenders. Fremantle and Geelong would be one of those. Essendon and Richmond, perhaps. Port Adelaide and Melbourne, maybe. And Carlton and Collingwood as upset contenders.